Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you get your questions in. You know what? We give you some answers. Who would have thought? Well, you probably understand that because you've been following this show for a while. And you've probably heard us tell you how to get on this very show. But just in case you've forgotten or you've not actioned that yet, here's a reminder.
Yep, make today the day. Just got to call 013 808 0035. That's 013 808 0035. Or if you'd prefer, you can go to propertyhub.net/ask and send us your question in that way instead. So while you ponder which question you're going to send our way, let's have a listen to someone who's already done that. This question comes in from Ali.
Hello, Rob and Rob. My name's Ali from London. Thank you very much for all of your content. It's been very helpful over the last few years. I still listen to it now. I have a question. The This Is Money website at the start of June, they featured a story saying that the 18-year property cycle's creator, he said that it wouldn't be possible for this boom to continue. It will probably continue the rest of this year, but next year there's going to be a property crash. Now, normally I sort of ignore stories like that, but the problem is they're kind of attributing it to the founder of the 18-year property cycle. I was wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Ali, I'll admit to being slightly confused by this question because I saw the article you're referring to when it came out and I've gone back and I've reread it to make sure. But as far as I can tell, he's not saying that there's going to be a property crash next year. In fact, he's explicitly saying that there's not going to be a property crash next year. So the background to this is that the 18-year property cycle that we talk about so much on this podcast, and if you don't know what it is, do go to propertyhub.net. Type in cycle, find lots of resources there. Well worth understanding. That cycle was popularized by Fred Harrison. And using that model, he has predicted the last few crashes and recessions way in advance, years and years in advance, with spooky accuracy. And the cycle, if you count forward 18 years from the last crash, would predict the next crash happening in around about 2025-26. And he asked in this article if he thinks that COVID may have affected the cycle. And he says here, the quote is, "The evidence reinforced my view that the virus did not have the power to stall the cycle. There might be a short-term easing off as the post-pandemic world returns to something akin to normal, but the price trend will continue upwards." So he's not saying there that there's going to be a price crash next year. Indeed, he was asked later in the article, when will the next crash happen? And the article says Harrison is adamant that a crash will take place about 5 years from now, and he wants people to at least be aware. And the quote from Harrison is, "The overall trend from here is up and up, squeezing people's purchasing power till the music stops in 2026, explains Harrison. House prices will peak in 2026, followed by a recession that will eclipse what happened in 2008. Then everyone will be shocked and will wonder why they were not warned." So Ali, to answer your question, why has he predicted a crash next year? He hasn't. He's predicted a crash in 2026, which is what he's consistently been saying all along. But I think you're wise with what you said to normally ignore stories like this, because as this article points out, and we've talked about on the podcast before, most predictions are completely wrong and will only send you off in totally the opposite direction from what you should be doing. But I also think you are wise to be paying attention to Fred Harrison's predictions and predictions involving the 18-year cycle, because of course it's not perfect. You can't use it in isolation. It's never going to be absolutely spot on, but historically it has performed so well as a guide. And Fred Harrison believes, and we believe too, that it's going to continue.
And you know what's going to continue? The questions. So let's hear from Mark.
Hi guys, my name is Mark. I've got a very quick question for you. Just wondered if you bought just a vanilla buy-to-let and did absolutely nothing clever with it at all, didn't refurbish it or anything like that, just put the deposit in, let's say 25%, and then left it. Just wondered, on average, how many years do you think it would be before you'd be in a position to remortgage and pull all your money out? So yeah, basically just the typical cycle for being able to execute that basic strategy. Okay, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark. Well, I'm happy to answer this for you. It's going to come down to making an assumption. So we have to assume at what level of growth the market will grow by. So currently, it will depend on which index you use, but the property market is up at least 8% year on year at the moment, and some report it to be even higher than that. But for the sake of this example, I'm going to suggest we use 5%, which is quite modest. In fact, it's lower than the long-term average. But I think it'll still hit home how simple property can be if you just let time kick in. So let's just keep things simple and say we'll buy a property worth 100,000. If we assume 5% growth year on year each year, then after 6 years, that property that was worth 100,000 is now worth 134,000, and around the numbers to keep things simple. So that 134,000, if we get a new mortgage of 75% against it, would mean our new mortgage is pretty much 100,000. So because your old mortgage was 75,000 because it was 75% loan to value, and now at 75% value with the new value, it's 100,000, you've taken that 25k out, or you can take that 25k out, and you can reinvest it and go again if you want. And then you have two properties doing the same thing. But then things snowball because you've got two properties then going up. And that means you'll be able to refinance even sooner if you combine the two. And the other thing that's not been considered here is rent, because you'll get paid rent for those 6 years as well. If you reinvest the profits from your rent, then based on that conservative assumption before, using an average rental level and average profits, you'd probably be able to have enough for a 25% deposit again after 4 years. So if you're not spending that rental profit, you can get your second buy-to-let even faster. So sometimes vanilla buy-to-lets can seem a bit dull, but actually, when you just look at the numbers and the maths behind this all, it can become quite exciting.
Well, there you go. 2 more questions answered on behalf of our lovely listeners. And please do feel free to send in your own. propertyhub.net/ask is the place to go. And once you've done that, there's not too long to sit around and wait anxiously for the next instalment of the podcast, because we're going to be back on Thursday and we've got a good one for you. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.